All right, so today is the 26th of August. What I'm doing is I'm going to have you get online and get on, and we're going to do some stuff as a class. What we'll end up doing again is a lot of the material that you're going to find in about the first 6 chapters of the book. Now, we're not going to do all that today. All right, we're going to start real slow. What we're going to do is we're going to create a very simple JavaScript program, and we're going to build it in phases. First, it's going to ask you for your first name. All right, and once you give it, then it's going to echo it back to you. Then we'll do the same thing with the last name. Then we'll combine the two to show you the entire name that you entered in. Then we're going to ask you, again, I tried to keep it fairly simple, so we're going to ask you, how many hours did you work last week? Okay, and you'll put that in. And then what's your hourly rate? And you'll put that in. Then it'll figure out your gross pay, and it'll show you that. Then at the end, it'll show you everything. And when you get done, it'll ask you if you want to do it again. All right? So I don't know if that sounds easy. I don't know if that sounds hard to you. But I want to mention this. When we first do this, there's a lot of ways that you can write code. All right? As an example, I can just come in here, and this is one thing that you should get used to doing, and that is just going in here and opening up an empty window in Notepad++. So hopefully, if you click your Start button down in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, all right, and you go to All Programs.
It's only in VM.
No, you can do this. You can be in VM or not in VM. This is totally up to you.
Well, the Notepad I didn't see on the Start.
You didn't see it on the regular startup?
No.
Yeah,
Well,
it's not on mine.
okay, it's not on yours. Okay, then let's go to the virtual desktop. That's fine. It's not a problem. I tell them what to put on the virtual desktop. They put basically whatever they want on the regular desktop.
Yeah.
So. Like that. So let me close some of this. All right, so we're on here. One thing that I can do, and don't worry about typing this in. You're gonna have plenty of time, but I just want to show you this, all right? So I can sit there and I could create an HTML page, and I can put JavaScript in it, okay? So there's 3 things that we can do. We can create a simple HTML page, and then we can add JavaScript to it directly, all right, and run it from there. We can create a simple HTML page, and we can externally link to a JavaScript file and run it that way. Or we can just run JavaScript, all right? And for now, that's what I'm going to show you, because I'm trying to keep this as simple as possible. So this is what I want to show you. And again, don't worry about typing this in, because everything I want you to type in, not only all right, are we going to do it as a class, but when we get done, I'm going to save it out there on the system. All right, and I know some people type faster than others. All right, and I get that. I'm not going to try to go too fast. But if I come in here, anytime that I create a function, in fact, let me first start by saving my file before I do anything. All right, so I'm going to save a file, and I'm going to save it right to my desktop, and I'm just going to call it firstjs.js, all right? First JavaScript.javascript, all right? Files that end with .js are automatically JavaScript files. The reason that I'm doing that and that I saved it right away is now notice as I start typing in things, all right, there is syntax highlighting that's built into Notepad++, okay? JavaScript is unbelievably liberal in what it lets you do with everything. You can call anything basically just about anything you want. All right, there are exceptions, and we'll go over those over time. But I want to write a function, and that's a unit of work that I want JavaScript to do. All right, and I'm going to call my function main. And the reason that I'm calling it main is a lot of programming languages require that the first file that you put in the system is a file, or the first function is one called main. All right, JavaScript doesn't do that, but I'm doing it because it's a nice place to start at. Okay, so if I come through here and I say alert, and I just say hello. All right, that's all I'm putting in there. Okay, I'll save it again, and I'm going to run it. Guess what's going to happen? My guess is absolutely nothing. Could be wrong, but I don't think anything's going to happen. So I'm going to run this, and I'll tell it to run it under Chrome, and it showed me my code. Well, that's not very good. All right, so that's the problem that you get when you try to run JavaScript from here. Does that make sense? Okay, so if I take this same code that I just keyed in right there, and now I'm going to have to remember those two URLs that I gave you, but that's okay. And I come in here. Oh, I hate this. And I'll tell you what, I'll go to here. And I'll go to jsbin.com. This is one of the ones I asked you to key in. JSBin is a really neat free tool. And you look at it, you go, well, what's so neat about it? Well, you'll notice here it says HTML. But if I click the button here, it also allows me to add CSS and JavaScript. All right, by just clicking those buttons. So I'm taking that code that I just put in here that said function main, alert hello, and I'm going to click run. And still nothing happens. All right, and I didn't think anything would happen. The reason that nothing is happening here is I've got this function that I made, and what should happen is a little alert box should pop up and say hello. The problem is, for a function to work, it has to be called. And right now, this function is not being called. All right, and how do you call a function? Well, the name of the function is main, and if I come down here and I put in main, paren, semicolon, and now click, notice what I get. All right? So again, as we're going through this, it may not totally make a lot of sense, but what this says is a function is a unit of work. If you were a really good programmer, and this is where I can say this and tell you that most people aren't really good programmers. If I was going to go and write a program that was going to ask you to enter your first name, your middle initial, your last name, your address, your city, your state, your zip, about 10 pieces of information. Technically, if you're a really good programmer, you should write that as 10 different functions. And the reason that you do that and you separate the work like that is if you have an error anyplace, you know right where to go to fix it. The problem is most of us are human. And what we end up doing is rather than writing 10 different functions, we write one function that has 10 different pieces in it. And that's not that bad in this case. But then somebody else adds more code to that function, and then more code to that function, and then more code, and pretty soon that function is 5,000 lines long. Now you got a problem in it, now you got to look in those 5,000 lines to try to fix it. So one of the things that's my responsibility to try to teach you from day one is to try to separate your code out. All right? So when we first do it, again, we're not going to do that much, but you're going to see within a week or so, that's what we're going to be doing. All right? Now, I don't even need my HTML window over here. I don't even need the CSS window over here for what we're doing. But if we wanted to, we could also put some code in here that would call the function and run it over here. I don't want to get into that right now. I want to concentrate just on the JavaScript. All right? So what I'd like all of you to try to do then is to get into jsbin.com and just key in what I've got right here. After you key it in, click the Run with JS button. All right? And ideally, again, what's going to happen is you're going to get a little alert box that pops up that says hello. If you have questions, raise your hand. I'll walk around, or John will walk around and try to give you a hand. Again, if that wasn't big enough, that's the file. Well, that's not big either, so I'm not going to give you that. Anybody have any problems with that? I know if you say, well, I'm just still typing it in. I get that. All right. I will tell you that we have to move at least a reasonable speed. So the best thing I can tell you is if you say, well, I don't know how to type, then learn. All right. So that's just a start. I wanted to make sure that would work for everybody. So again, I'm clicking that CSS button and I click the HTML button. So all I have in here now is my JavaScript button open. All right. We will eventually go back and we'll take the programs that we create and I'll show you how to run them off of HTML. It's not very difficult, but like I said, for now, I just want to concentrate on the JavaScript. All right, seeing that there aren't any questions, again, I could run this as many times as I want and it should always do the same thing here, all right? Well, I don't know about you, but in my opinion at least, right now, this program isn't at all interactive. You click a button and it just shoots a box at you that says hello. So I'd like to bring some interactivity into it. So instead of doing an alert, which is a way of displaying output to a user on the screen, we're going to use a prompt, which is a way of getting input, all right, from the user. All right, so we're going to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is everything that I do in here, I'm going to give you a comment first to tell you what I'm doing. If I put in 2 forward slashes, that's the one right next to your shift key on the right. So a forward slash goes from right to left. Don't put in that one because it means something different. Got it? Thank you.
Is that fast enough for you?
Yeah, I'm impressed.
I just cut it out of a big hump.
All right, thank you. We're having a problem because since this is a new microphone and a new keyboard, John was telling me he was listening to one of the tapes yesterday and all you heard was click, 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 click from the keyboard. So we're trying to put some foam down there to try to muffle the sound a little bit. So that's what that's for. So this has got a different meaning. All right, but this right here, if you put 2 of these together, anything to the right of that on that line is a comment. So if I wanted to, I could put 5 straight lines of comments. If I had a comment that spanned multiple lines, so if I just wanted to put hello out there, and if for some reason I wanted to put that over 3 lines, I could do slash, 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 or I can do this. If I start a comment with a slash and then a star and end it with a star and a slash, that's a multi-line comment. But you'll see on here, kind of hard to tell, it looks gray, but it really is green. All right, so I'm going to say here, just enter first name. Now, one thing to realize as we start doing this, the programs we're going to write at the beginning, for lack of better words, all right, for lack of better words, at the beginning, these programs are going to be stupid. We're not going to put any validation in there or anything. So it's going to ask your name. And if you leave it blank, it thinks your name is blank. If you put 1, 2, 3, it thinks your name is 1, 2, 3. Does that make sense? All right. So I'm going to say this. All right, I'll leave that up there, but just let me run it to show you what it's going to say. So when I click Run with JS button, now I get enter first name, please. And that's from right here, enter first name, please. And then it's got a default value in blue there that says first name here. That's this value right here. So whatever value I do enter into there, it's going to take it. So if I type Jeff in there, it's going to take Jeff and it's going to put that into the variable called first name. Does that make sense? Again, when I'm saying here, enter first name, it's taking the results of the prompt statement and it's assigning them to the variable called first name. All right. So again, I'll put Jeff in there. All right. You don't see anything special after I do that. But I'm going to come through here now, and I'm going to put another one of those alert statements in. Move this over a bit. So I'm going to say alert, first name entered was. All right, and that's done. So I'm going to run it again, and it says, enter first name, please. I put in Jeff, I hit enter, and it comes back and it says, first name entered was Jeff. You should be able to do the same thing. I'll give you a second to key that in. Let me close that. There you go. Now, if I just entered in my first name information, I can grab all of that stuff I just entered. And after I grab it, by highlighting it all, and I just took my left mouse button and dragged over it, so it's all highlighted now, so I can hold down on the control key and tap the letter C to copy, and then do a control V to paste. Why? Because I don't feel like typing a lot, so now I can say last name. So let me run this and make sure that it works. Question?
I think the variable for the second one should be last name.
Yes, you are correct. Thank you. That should be last. Thank you. I was wondering, see how that was blue and that was black? So you can tell, and thank you. So what you're starting to do is you're starting to debug. I'll take your questions in just a sec. Like I said, I want to run it first and make sure that it works. Because I don't want to put code up here that's wrong, like I just did. All right. So yeah, that works. Question?
It was about the quotations.
Okay. Yes. Question?
Can you make it a little bigger?
Don't know if it allows me to play with the font size in here at all or not.
Try Control Plus.
See, that's why they paid you on those big bucks. All right?
Thanks.
Sure. All right, so I'll give you a second to key all that in, and when you get it done, and hopefully you get it working, I want to go over every line that's in there. All right? And if you are at home, you can go into jsbin.com yourselves. You don't need to be on the virtual desktop. You can key in anything you want in there, and you can run it, you know, if as long as it's valid JavaScript. You can also use it to enter HTML and CSS. All right, it's a really nice little tool. And notice it says there on the end, log in or register. If you register, then what you can do is you can take the stuff that you create out here and you can actually save it. You get an account and you save it out to JSBin. All right, I believe that's free too. I don't have an account, so I don't know. All right, hopefully everybody's gotten a chance to put that in, but I'd like to go through this one line at a time. All right, again, that isn't mine, that JavaScript. Function main. So this is a function. This whole thing, like most programming languages, JavaScript is known as a block structured language. A block is anything that you put within curly braces. All right, so this is the beginning of the function. That's the end of the function. So everything that's in between here is the function. Function's a key word, as is var, and that's why they're purple right here. All right, someplace in your book, and we'll get to that point, they have a listing of all the keywords in JavaScript. There aren't a lot. I think it's around 50 or something like that. All right. Main is just a name I came up with. The system needs you to put parentheses after a function name because if I could create a variable that's called main, the only way, there's two ways here that JavaScript knows that this is a function. Of course, it's because it's got function in front of it, but the parentheses say also that it's a function. And what you'll see as we go on is you can put things in those parentheses that are known typically as arguments. You know, the example that I give, and it's not a great one, that if my kid comes home from school and her room is just really a pigsty, and I say, Chloe, clean the room, you know, knowing her, because she's as big a smart aleck as her dad is, she'll say, what room? All right, so if I say clean the room, and then I put in the parentheses, your bedroom. All right, so when you put something in those parentheses, that's information that the function needs in order to be able to do its job. This one doesn't need any extra information, so we don't have to do that. All right. If we were going to have a function that was going to add two numbers, we might have to pass those two numbers into the function so it has something to add. All right. You'll see that as we go on in here. Again, the stuff in green is just comments, so we talked about that before. In JavaScript, you don't have to use the word var. You can leave it out, but it's considered good programming practice to always put it in. There's going to be a bunch of weird rules, and I can say a bunch of stuff right now, but it might confuse you, so I don't want to say that. The variables that you see right here, first name and last name, they're known as local variables because they're declared inside of this function. So they're only known in this function. If I created another function, those variables wouldn't be directly available to that function. So we're telling you, hopefully you saw that and you got a chance to run it. And this right here is the string that we put out there. Enter first name, please. What comes after that, you don't have to put anything in here. You can leave off the comma and you can leave off what I've got here. But that's known as a default value. So you saw that in blue, it came up and it said first name here. All right. And what we're going to do in just a second is we're going to add a couple variables that these are string variables because they're just characters. We're going to add a couple of number variables, numeric variables. And we'll do it basically the same way. You'll see that. All right. But it's kind of nice to prompt a person when you're writing a program. That may be a little bit overkill. If you're saying enter your first name, please, all right, that hopefully they're smart enough that they could put in their first name. All right. And then we do an alert. And it says, first name entered was, and then notice there's a blank space here, and it says plus first name. That plus right there doesn't mean addition. That means concatenate or add onto this string that says first name entered was, space, add the first name that we just entered. All right? And this stuff is explained in your book. So as we go through it, you know, if it doesn't make sense, please ask. But if it still doesn't make sense, then go back and take a look at it in your book because the author does talk about it. Then we do the exact same thing. but instead of saying first name, we say last name. And you saw my error, all right, because I repeated first name here. And that's bad because I already had a variable called first name, but it's also bad because then I tried to use last name over here where it hadn't been declared yet. All right. So again, all we're doing right here is we've got this function called main that we're calling down here. We're telling the person to enter their first name, and it brings up a little what's called a prompt box to tell them to do that. Then we give them another box that's called an alert box that tells them what we just entered. Then we do the exact same thing for the last name. Then I said full name entered was blank space, and then I added the first name and then a blank space and then the last name. We didn't have to do all that stuff. I didn't really even have to, I could have created a new variable that was called full name if I wanted to do that. All right? You got a lot of liberties that you can take as a programmer. And sometimes it's kind of tough because if you were to show me your program and you go, oh, did I do everything right? Yeah. Is that how you would have written it? No. All right? But then you might look at mine and say, well, yeah, you did it right too, but I wouldn't have written it that way. And that's good when you start to think like that. Then you're thinking like a programmer. Most of the time, literally, there are no programming police that are going to watch you as you're coding things and say, you shouldn't do this way. All right? And I'm trying to adhere to good JavaScript standards, which says do use var and put a semicolon at the end of each executable line. Right? And then when we're all done, we're calling main. Does all that stuff make sense? Is there anything in there that anyone has any questions on? Yes?
You said the parentheses means what again?
The parentheses in here, all right, it means that it's a function, and what you put in there are what are called arguments, and that's just information that the function needs to do its job. Here it doesn't need any extra information, but you still need to put the parens in. In most languages, that's how you do it. Some languages, if you don't have any arguments, it lets you leave the parentheses off. This is not one of them. All right, so far we put in our first name and we put in our last name. All right, and what I'm going to do right now, hopefully this is okay with you, is I'm going to take these two alert boxes that are in here. You can leave yours in, that's fine. But I'm just not going to have enough room on the screen to show you what I want to show you if I leave all that stuff in, okay? So I'm just going to start removing some of the white space and stuff that I've got in here just so that you can see everything that we're going to do, all right? So there's the first name, there's the last name. Again, depending on how anal you are, you can do that if you want to. It doesn't matter one way or the other. JavaScript allows you to line everything up pretty if you want to. And some people say, oh, you really, it's good programming practice says you should have a blank space there and a blank. You can do that too. Whether you do that or don't do that, it's not going to affect at all the way the program works. All right. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a couple more variables. So I'm going to say var, and I'm just calling this hours. All right. And I'll put another prompt in here, and I'll say enter hours worked, please. And then I'm going to do another one that's called rate. Now I want to make sure that everything I've entered so far is correct. So I'm going to add another alert now, and that's going to alert everything. Okay? So what I want is after I've done this, I want it to come out and say this. On the first line, I want it to say name, and then I want it to put my first name, a blank space, and my last name. Then I want to say hours, and I want to put in whatever my hours are, and then I want to say rate, and I want to put in whatever my hourly rate was. Does that make sense? But I want each one of these to display on their own line. And I told you before, if you made a comment, to do this and not do this. All right? Because if you put inside of a line there a backslash, that's not a slash, that's a backslash. All right, that's known as an escape character. That means that the next character that you put in after it has a special meaning. In this case, I'm going to put at the end of this \n. That means new line. That's like you hit your enter key. All right, if you say I don't get it, watch what I put in. All right, and you'll see where the \n's are, and then hopefully it'll make some sense. All right, and I could put this on. I could put this alert in one same box if I want to, or I could put it in 3 different ones. I want to put it into one, so I'm going to say alert. And JavaScript doesn't care if I'm going onto a new line here. It doesn't care. Plus. Now, give me a sec. I want to run this and make sure that it looks like that. All right. Okay, as far as I can tell, it does. And don't worry, if you say, well, that's not perfectly lined up, we could do some massaging with that. That's not really that important. So I'll let you put that in, and then we'll go back and we'll look at those. Again, I don't know if that helps you to see things actually lined up like that so you can see what goes with what. You can put in as much white space here as you need to make it simpler for you. All right, so I've come in here and I've added two more variables, one called hours and one called rate. And those numbers, if you looked at it on your screen, it looked like the number 40, okay? But it really wasn't. There is a difference in most programming languages. There is a difference between this, double quote, 40, and this. In most programming languages. In most programming languages, that's the string 40. It has no numeric value to it whatsoever. All right? And that's the number 40. On here, we literally, when we type in 40, we're not typing in 40. We're typing in the character string 40. All right? We will be able to do math with it because JavaScript allows you to do that. And we're going to add another line right here that's going to say var gross equals. Somebody want to tell me what you think? How are we going to figure out the gross? Hours times rate. So that I'm going to add that line up there. In fact, that's not a prompt. It's hours times rate. And now I can go and add some more stuff in here. All right, and let's double check and make sure I didn't break anything.
You're missing a quotation after the last new line character.
After the last, there you go. Thank you. All right, so now I've got all the information. We're going to format that in just a minute, okay? But I want you to go ahead and put that in. Okay, when we started, instead of having you type in var first name equal prompt, etc., if I just done this, all right, that would have been known as declaring a variable. That variable, since we didn't give it any initial value like we did right here, the value of that variable, if we do it like this, is referred to as null. And that means that's unknown. All right? So what we're doing in these lines here, all 5 of these lines, on the left-hand side of the equal sign, we're doing variable initialization. I'm sorry, try it again. On the left-hand side of the equal sign, we're doing variable declaration. On the right-hand side of the equal sign, we're doing variable initialization. So we're both declaring variables and initializing them at the same time. You don't have to do that in virtually any language. You can declare the variable, and then on a later line, you can give it an initial value. Some programming languages, all right, they're very few, but some programming languages like VisualBasic.net, if I were to do this, I wouldn't set it up with a var statement, but if I set up a first name as a string field, it would automatically set it to this, double quote, which is called the empty string, which means there's nothing in it. That's not what null is. Null means unknown, all right? So we've declared 5 variables here. And again, that declaration is what takes place: var first name, var last name, var hours, var rate, and var gross. That's the 5 variable declarations. The 4 prompts and the hours times rate, those are the variable initialization. So we've chosen here to both declare and initialize our variables, give them a value at the same time. But think about it, if that doesn't make sense to you. Sometimes, because I know this has happened before, you probably know people this has happened to also, but we had some friends, and they were going to have a child, and they were told by the doctor it was a girl. So they did the room up in pink and did everything, and of course when it was born it was a boy. All right? And they said, well, we weren't ready for this. What are you going to name it? We don't know. So technically the baby's name was null. It was unknown until they decided to give him a name. All right? But if they think it's going to be a girl and it is a girl, then maybe they had a name picked out. So as soon as the baby's born, what's her name? Boom, they give you a name. All right? So you've got your choice in virtually any programming language. You can just declare a variable without initializing it, or you can declare it and initialize it in one stroke, or you can declare it and initialize it later. It's considered good programming practice to initialize variables as soon as you declare them in most languages. All right, there are exceptions, not in JavaScript. All right. And then down here, all we added was just the thing to print the gross. right? So we get 4 pieces of information from the user, and based off of 2 of those pieces of information that we got from the user, we multiply one by the other, and if you haven't seen this, addition is the old plus sign, subtraction is the minus sign, multiplication is an asterisk, and division is a forward slash. All right? And you'll see in some languages they'll have another one here, which is a percent sign, and that's called modulo, or it's the remainder operator. You don't have to worry about that right now. All right? So we said, all right, now we've got an hours and we've got a rate. Okay? And multiply the 2 together and then print everything out. Well, that works just fine until I do something like this. All right. Now notice it took the value, too many and not enough, and then it tried to multiply them together, and it's got this thing there that says nan. Anybody want to guess what that means? It literally is a job. Go ahead.
Not a number.
That's exactly what it means. That's actually a JavaScript term that means not a number. So I'm not going to get into it today with you, but we're going to get into it very shortly, and that is when you put in this value, you might want to check, and there actually is a function that you can use that's called is NaN, is not a number. So if you're expecting something numeric and you put something in that's non-numeric, you can force the user, or you can just say, you know what, forget you, I'm just going to put a number in there for you. Now that's not really a good practice, all right? But you can do that. And if you say, well, that doesn't make any sense, sure it does. You'll find this out if you haven't already. If you try to log in the morning and you put in either a wrong password or a wrong username, after 3 times it'll lock you out. The system is saying they're not sure that's you. And sometimes when you write code, you only want to give a user a certain number of times to do something. And if they don't do it in that amount of time, you could say you're hopeless, all right? Or you could just say, I'm going to do it for you, or I'm not going to allow you to do it at all. All right? Now, the only thing that's left on here is I can't run this program continuously. So I'm going to add that, and after we put that in, we're going to take a break. I'm going to create another variable down here. All right, and if it gets hard to read, you're going to have to let me know. I don't know if this will slide up or not, but we'll find out. And I'm going to call it again. It's just a variable that I made up. I slid it up a little bit, so hopefully you can all see that. That's the whole program that I wanted to get through with you. All right? Now, I'm just going to run it one more time. I'll leave it up there, but I'm going to run it again to make sure that indeed it's going to allow us to run it again. So enter your name. Okay, there's my information. Do you want to run the program again? If so, hit the enter key. John works a lot more than I do and makes a lot more than I do. So, all right. So again, I can keep doing that now. All right. Now if I type in anything other than yes, even a Y, it doesn't matter. The program now stops. All right. It's 8:49. I'm going to leave that up there, but I think it's a good time to take a break. So let's come back. Let's make it about 5 after 9. All right. And we'll pick it up from there. Now, in just a second, I'm going to stop this because I want to go back and start to produce this. Okay, so it's going to leave here for about a minute, but then I'll bring it back up again.